Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today here on the Voice of Progressive Minnesota, AM 950 Radio, the Voice of Progressive Minnesota. You can stream us at AM 950radio.com. And please meet the Morning Stars. Andre is first this morning. The Morning Stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. We're also streaming on X at Santita J. So, everybody, I need you to do me a favor. Like and share. When you go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. I need you to like the show because it helps us with the algorithms. It helps us when people are trying to search for us. It pushes us up in the Google search engine. We need your assistance. We need your help. We need your support. If you like what you're hearing, even if you disagree from time to time or a whole lot, or if you think other people need to hear it, please like and share the show and like and subscribe at Santita J. We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to have Greg Palast, the best-selling author of The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Indeed, he was the journalist who broke the corruption, the theft of the 2000 election. But he couldn't get published in the United States. He had to go to the BBC. And then he kind of made his way back to Rolling Stone and on, but he's become an icon in the space of really unveiling voter suppression, voter harassment, voting rights. And he has a new movie. We showed it several years ago, Vigilante, and he has edited it, updated it to meet these times. He's going to be showing it at the Rainbow Push Convention, which started. And we hope that you will join us. The Rainbow Push Coalition Convention will extend through the weekend. And go to rainbowpush.org. We're streaming there, but we also want you to go to just, if you can, come on in from Minneapolis. Come in from anywhere that you're hearing this. Philadelphia, everybody. Well, Abraham, if you don't come in from Venezuela, I'll get it, but you can certainly stream it because we're going to have a lot of great people. I just spoke with Nina Turner last night, former state senator, Ohio State Senator Nina Turner, someone who's been so closely allied with Senator Bernie Sanders. She is already in town. She came in early. Many of us are already going to be at some point at the Democratic Convention, but she came in early so that she could participate in the Rainbow Convention, the Rainbow Push Convention. We will have Senator Bernie Sanders there, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Judge Greg Mathis, T.O. Hardiman from Violence Interrupters, and Dr. LaShawn Latrice from Make Noise for Change. We will have, I said Reverend Al Sharpton. We're going to have the Nation magazine, which will, Ro Khanna, the Congressman Ro Khanna. All these people are coming in early to honor Reverend Jackson on Sunday. I think they're going to do a little something at the Democratic Convention, although it's the 40th anniversary of Reverend Jackson's presidential run. From what I can understand, they're going to kind of put him in a civil rights basket. So there will be that at the Democratic Convention, but no singular acknowledgement of his presidential run. But no matter, it happened, and now we're experiencing this moment that we've got now. So praise God for that. So look, come to the Rainbow Push Convention. We've got women who are going to be gathering from all over the world. I met several people from South Africa. We've had some people coming in from Europe, and it's been fantastic. I was with T.O. Hardiman and Dr. LaShawn Latrice at the convention yesterday. We really did have a good time. Gave away a lot of school supplies and banned books to our children. Banned books. So everybody, please like the show. Like the show. I see you all are beginning to like the show. Please do that. Hey, Ashley and Zenobia, Dave, Robert, the Carib Queen, Bernadette. And let's get right to it. What should we be expecting as we talk about voter suppression and voting rights in the next hour, and how that is all supposed to work, and all of the tactics that are being employed to strike your name from the voter rolls? That's in the second hour. But first, let's talk about this Democratic Convention. This has been a tumultuous season, Dr. David Gibbs. I'm going to start with you, professor of history at the University of Arizona. Indeed, I encourage you to get his book, The Revolt of the Rich. It explains so much so much of what we're dealing with right now. Indeed, there's one of the laws of physics: every action merits an equal and opposite reaction. Well, with the advances of the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and into the 70s, the beginning of the 70s, well, something happened. The rich, the oligarchs, pushed back. They kept running Reagan for office until they made him win. And you just keep on going with that. You keep on going with that. Really, Reagan ushered in the pushback against the unions. We saw a sharp decline in union membership, and and we saw really the oligarchs really trying to tamp the union movement out. They were not successful, but they made a lot of headway. And so you need to read this book so you can understand why we are where we are and who we are right now. Ashley King, that's right. The Rainbow Push Convention through Sunday. You want to be there. Everybody, please like and share the show. Like the show. Thumbs up, everybody. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. But let's talk about this Democratic convention. Before I pivot to you, Tio Hardiman, and you, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, because it seems, Dr. Gibbs, we're going to have two conventions. We're going to have a convention, well, certainly a gathering, because so much has already been decided. Before people got to Chicago, this has just been a very interesting process. I mean, you've got the president who got 14 million votes. 14 to 15% are uncommitted, but he got a lot of votes, got a lot of support, even with the negative press that he's been getting for quite some time, for the past almost 4 years. But the donors started complaining after he had what everyone agrees was a bad night at his debate. And that was it. That was it. The donors and the party leaders got together in a. We're still not quite sure what happened, David Gibbs, but thank goodness for Seymour Hersh and some other investigative journalists who are free of corporate media. They've been sharing is a little unsettling, because you just you just eased someone out. That having been said, well, they did swap out the president for someone who is growing in popularity, someone who struggled 4 years ago. But she is growing in popularity today, and that is Vice President Kamala Harris. So, let's talk about what we're seeing now, what we can expect. I mean, like I said, 14 million voters. Well, they've already affirmed the nominee, the presidential nominee. And now we are looking at just what are we going to do with the uncommitted? What is this? What is this? What is this? I'm just using convention because that's the term that's used. What are we looking at? What can we expect to see, Dr. David Gibbs?
Well, let me comment a little bit on the historical background to it. Historically, conventions were sort of an instrument of democracy, and it was always very flawed democracy. I mean, the flaws in American democracy, both in terms of racial discrimination, class issues, in terms of the rich having influence. These always have been present in American society. But the nomination process, the process of particularly the convention, did have a democratic function, which is that it was a venue for debate, an arena for open discussion, where people could openly disagree and clash, and that was one of the functions of a convention. Was an arena where that took place. All right. And that gradually was undermined in the 1960s. The Republican Party and the Democratic Party pretty much ditched the convention as a really significant democratic instrument and turned it into a PR exercise and an extended advertisement. For the Democrats, the turning point was 68 and also to some extent 72. Both of these were sort of seen as disastrous conventions, 68 especially, because you had the famous riots between the anti-war demonstrators on the one hand and the Chicago police force on the other hand. You had crowds of people chanting "the whole world is watching" while the police bashed their heads in, essentially, on TV cameras. This was really seen as such a disaster for the Democrats, a public relations disaster, that contributed to their later defeat in that election and the rise of Richard Nixon. 72, again, was also seen as too democratic. And so I think the conclusion the Democrats drew from that is to do what the Republicans had already done, which is to end the democratic process before the convention, turn the convention simply into a showcase where they can showcase party unity, paper over any differences for the most part, and have a big love fest with everything very carefully choreographed and orchestrated. I don't doubt that's what we're going to see here. This has really reached an extreme form in the Democratic Party of today. Um, it's often been said that there was a very undemocratic, almost, if you will, almost conspiratorial aspect to the way Biden was pushed aside and Kamala Harris was pushed in. Um, and it was done very much behind closed doors, with indeed the donors playing a major role. The donors don't want Biden to continue and so on. So there was nothing democratic about it. Let me say that I understand why the Democrats did what they did, in that they were faced with the problem of a candidate having essentially a mental and physical meltdown on national television. And they had to replace him, and they had no choice, and they had to do it very fast given the circumstances. So I don't think I myself can blame them for doing this quickly and undemocratically. What I do think there's a larger question of is the whole process leading up to this was one that was profoundly undemocratic. The Democratic Party decided in advance that Joseph Biden, despite all of his infirmities, would be the nominee. And they basically intimidated any challengers into not challenging him. There was no real process at all. Dean Phillips challenged him, mostly on basis of the fact that Biden was not up to running for president. He was not up to being president. And, he was very much marginalized and ridiculed. And it turned out, in retrospect, he had a point. I think there's no doubt he had a point. And the whole process does not reflect well on where the party is. Now, they've done an excellent job of launching Harris's campaign far better than I would have expected. I think far better than anybody expected. This is very, very carefully orchestrated. It was done on the basis of, what people have said is vibes. Joy is the word people are using. But there's not really that much substance so far. I think we can see with the selection of Waltz, there will be some effort made to reclaim at least some of the working class support the Democrats have lost to the Republicans. I think the main focus of the party will nevertheless be the educated upper middle class. And on issues like abortion, there will indeed be an effort to mobilize people of color in a context where, at least until now, Trump has been doing better than expected among people of color. But I think there's an effort, again, to reclaim that constituency for the Democratic Party now. They're having some success. Clearly, Harris has been rising in the polls. The election is dead even right now, according to all the polls. The momentum, at least for the moment, is with the Democratic Party. And you might see some, a post-convention bump as a result of this massive advertisement the Democrats are going to do. They have a lot of divisions in the Democratic Party, mostly around Gaza. And that's going to be carefully papered over. And the demonstrators, I think, will be somewhat restrained. I could be wrong about this, but I suspect they'll be somewhat restrained because there always will be the admonition that you don't want Trump to be elected. So you'd better not overemphasize the Gaza issue. Let Trump be elected. I think that will be effective to some degree. I've noted myself there's an inconsistency in the Gaza solidarity movement. On the one hand, they're accusing the Democrats of aiding and abetting genocide, which is a very serious charge. And one where at least some you could make a case for that. People have made a case for that. And on the other hand, they're saying we're nevertheless going to vote for the Democratic Party no matter what, which means you have no leverage. Someone like Kamala Harris would look at the demonstrators and say, well, they'll vote for me anyway, so I don't really need to give in to them at all, except cosmetically. Cosmetically, there'll be some mild criticism of Israeli atrocities, of Israel's bombing of hospitals and things like that. I know there was a recent story, a horrific story, and you may have seen, of a man who just gleefully registered his twin children who were just born with the hospital, and almost immediately after getting the birth certificates, they were blown up in an Israeli airstrike, and the man was hysterical. This is happening all over Gaza. It's happening again and again. The Democrats are going to have a difficult time dealing with that, but ultimately, the demonstrators will come out and vote, for the most part, for Harris, which means they will have no leverage over her. And so I suspect what you will see is mostly a love fest. that will advance the Democratic ticket. And how this election is going to go is anybody's guess. It could go either way. It is a 50-50 election. I still myself think the odds would somewhat favor Trump because the economic fundamentals and also the international fundamentals don't look so good for the Democrats. And I think that will ultimately be decisive, but I could be wrong. The Democrats have done much better than I would have thought they could do. And the Democrats are clearly going to try and build upon their momentum at this convention as a way of sort of propelling them back into the White House once again. So I'm expecting a somewhat placid Democratic convention where any criticism is going to be shunted aside and marginalized as much as possible.
Long term, what will be the impact of that? Or do we have short political memories?
Mostly, their memories do tend to be very short in the United States, and the issue always is the next election, the next election, the next
Mhm.
election. But nevertheless, the long-term effect of this is going to be, well, two things. One is a continuation of, um, a convention system, a political convention system that is not advanced for democracy
Mhm.
at all. I think the more important one is that, um, there are going to be basic issues in the United States that are going to be shunted aside, beginning with America's support for Israel, unconditional support for Israel, no matter what Israel does. This could be very well tested before the election if there's a war, let us say, between Israel and Hezbollah or Israel and Iran, which is very possible. Some would say even likely. How the Democrats are going to manage that in terms of avoiding, a mass descent into hell in the Middle East is hard to say. How they'll manage that politically and electorally is hard to say. But it will not be a good look for the Democrats because the image is the world spiraling out of control under their watch. In the Navy, there's a phrase, it happened on your watch, so you're responsible. Well, this is happening on the Democrats' watch. As Biden is president, but of course, Harris is vice president, so she's responsible too. There's the war in Ukraine, which, despite the recent events in the Kursk region, by all indications, Russia's winning this war, and they will win in the long term. That too basically will not be a good look for the Democrats. And then there's the economic situation, which is wages have been down. I think a lot of that is bad luck for the Democrats. It's not all their fault, but nevertheless, wages are down under the Biden presidency from what they were under the Trump presidency. And I think for all of these reasons, I'm not that sanguine. Well, I would give a slight edge in terms of the odds to the Republicans. Again, not that I don't endorse anybody. I don't do that. I'm certainly not pro-Trump, but I'm just saying objectively, I can still see this going the Trump's way in the end.
I guess I'm still. I'm stumped. I'm trying to figure out how, with his negatives, as are framed by corporate media,
Yeah,
um, how it speaks to, I think, a strength that we're not examining
right.
because he continues to not just hold on, but what, 34 convictions.
Yeah,
He's still not just in the mix. I mean, it's a tie.
yeah. It's a time,
and
definitely a
and
time.
and the enthusiasm on his side is great. On the Democratic side, it is growing, no question about that. Exponentially, no question about that. But I think his is growing, but it's also deepening. There's a lot. So I mean, what is it? Am I misreading it? I mean, and this is not an endorsement for former President Trump. Everybody, T.O. Hardeman from Violence Interrupters and Dr. LaShawn Latrice. I'm going to get to you in a hot second. It's just, I think that I think you got to diagnose, or you have to know what you're looking at
That's right.
if you want to know how to fight it.
That's right.
T.O., I've seen you do that. You examine people. You have these great analyses, of course, on WVON here in Chicago, every Sunday morning from 6 to 7 a.m. Central Standard Time. And it's a really great community based broadcast. I mean, a lot of people listening, uh, and because they feel heard. And I get that sense with, I mean, what is it? Well, I mean, it's
Well,
not magic. But it's something that he is resonating with people in a way that is I don't. I'm trying to understand it.
well, I want to say this here, Santita. It's an honor to be on your show again today. And Trump has what you call that. Let me put it the right way. He has that whip appeal, like baby face. But let me explain. Let me explain. I'm just messing with you. Let me explain this. What's going on with Donald Trump? He represents the old school, traditional type of value system. Far as with some, it's resonating with some Americans that may vote for Trump. Since Ms. Harris entered the race, running for president on the Democratic side, it kind of zapped a lot of the energy out of Trump's African American base because he was
Hmm.
beginning to build numbers in the African American community. Even though Trump has been convicted of 34 convictions, he has a multitude of issues with his character. But some people are willing to overlook it, and let's call it like it is. It's really white privilege 2.0. Let's just be straight up because there's nowhere there will never be another time in history where a person can run for president with so many problems, put it like that, 99 problems, in his background. That had never happened before. But at the same time, Trump is a showman. Trump he's trumping everybody being a showman right now. That's why he's still what you might say popular with the people here in America. But the risk, we have a risk at hand here because what's going on, all the world leaders have failed over in Palestine and the Israeli situation because this situation has been going on for decades, for a long, long time. And nobody, not one political leader, Brother David and Dr. Latrice, has been able to come up with a plan to actually work things out over there in the Middle East, right? So that's an issue that I see. We got this illegal immigration in the signs that they say they're asylum seekers, right? You have issues with reparations in the African American community. You have a lot, the Ukrainian war with the Russians, and all those issues are taking place right now. But the reality is that right now the momentum pendulum is swinging in favor of the Democrats, in my opinion, based on the fact that what happened with the Democrats. They're representing what you might say the new world type of what's going on now. The LGBT community issues, right? They represent those issues. They're representing the issues of what you might say the African. The perception that they're representing the issues of the African American community, but that may not be true because we still have a lot of people living in poverty. Unemployment rates are so high within the African American community, so a lot of work has to be done there. Not one of the candidates that I've seen so far have taken on the issue of reparations in a real way. Anytime you bring up reparations, everybody's talking about a study. We need to just study the impact of reparations, all that kind of. We have all the math. The math has been calculated already to the tune of $17 trillion. All right. So that's another issue there. And how, now with Biden, just going back to Biden for a moment here, Biden did pretty good as president for the 4 years, and he's still serving now, even though I know he had a senior moment. But look, all of us will have to become older one day, so I'm not going to knock Biden because he has some issues without a doubt. But, a lot of people do have issues, but the way that the Democrats went about it, I think they really put him on Front Street, and they should not have been so out in the open. They should have just had some backdoor meetings with Biden and let him step aside. But no one saw Mrs. Harris coming. That was what you call a genius move. Whoever was behind Miss Harris. Now you got to think about it, Santita. Even in local politics here in Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson was low in the polls in the beginning. Lloyd Lightfoot was low in the polls in the beginning. Nobody saw Barack Obama coming in the past, so it happens. It happens. It's like magic. But right now, if you were to ask me, even before the DNC, which is coming up next week, the Democrats appear to have a lot of momentum going their way. And by Mrs. Harris picking the Waltz to run as her running mate, they represent everything that's going on in America today. And Trump may be seen by some voters as representing a lot of things that's going on in America in the past, but he's also trying to bring traditional values back for those who respect traditional values. Then you have Bobby Kennedy running as an independent. So we have a few other people out there trying to get their voices heard. So that's my take on what's happening right now. And let's just see, the verdict is still out. I just put it like that. And I stand on what I'm saying in regards to Trump. And I'm not endorsing nobody here either. My thing is, I just don't see the Democrats have tried to be so perfect. With any candidate that they have running, they try to be so perfect, like nobody has anything in their background. So Trump is straight out front. What you see is what you get. Like the Dramatics had a song called "What You See Is What You Get." You know what you're getting with Donald Trump. Period. You may not know what you're gonna get with the Democrats. All right. That's my take on everything.
T.O. Hardiman, WVON, every Sunday from 6 to 7
Yes.
p.m. Central Standard Time. You don't want to miss it. David Gibbs, I know, Dr. Gibbs, you've got to go. Of course, your book is The Revolt of the Rich. Um, I because we're mindful of your time. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, if you begging your pardon, I wanted to give him uh, some moments to conclude because I promised him 30 minutes, and that is what we're going to get. And I want him to come back.
No problem at all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, LaShawn. Well, I think that yeah, it's going to be a very exciting election, not in a positive way, because I think we've already seen some violence. There was the assassination attempt against Trump. I suspect we could easily see more violence, and I'm very worried about that prospect, as many people are. I think one of the things you are seeing is I tend to focus mostly on economics, and I think that is mostly what voters focus on. How do you pay the rent? For a lot of people, that comes first, and I understand that. But I think that a secondary factor, which was touched upon by Mr. Hardiman, is culture, and I think there is a certain sense that the Democrats do represent a kind of, it must be said, elitist tone, which doesn't work well. And I'm very surprised to keep sticking with this elitist tone, the jargony vocabulary, the words like intersectionality. It's not just a question of things like tolerance of, let's say, LGBT lifestyles, which I 100% support. But it's a question of things like drag queen story hour. I never understood why people have to push things like that. If you want gay rights, you push for gay rights. People are ready for that. But then you bring in drag queen story hour, that's just looking for trouble. But the Democrats and sort of the activist left have a way of looking for trouble and sort of antagonizing people needlessly, quite needlessly. And
If I may interrupt you here, that doesn't play well in the Black community. I think Dr. Latrice
sure.
and Teal Hardiman would agree with that. Black parents push back against that. Black people push back against that. Whether we attend church regularly or not, it's just like, wait a minute, don't push me here.
Yep.
I want my voting rights. I want the rights of agency over my body because Black women historically have not had that.
Mm-hmm.
We would be routinely raped by white men and no one would defend us. That's why Rosa Parks became famous in Alabama, because she had the courage to take on those cases and try to get these men prosecuted. I mean, you keep on going. It's like, bread and butter issues. And, then I'm like, and I fully support my LGBTQ brothers and sisters and children. Yes. That having been said, I don't understand the point of that. And because it's alienating.
That's right.
So many people. And it's like, why are you people are now signing on to, this is who I am. I was born this way. People signing on to that. But now it's like, you're going over here. And that is because that is something that people are discussing now, because now you're dealing with it in your grammar schools, with the issue with restrooms and things like that. And it's a lot. Dr. Gibbs.
No, I mean, it is basically a question of, the right never makes mistakes like this. I mean, Charles Koch, whom I intensely dislike, he never basically does things that are going to antagonize people. He wants to win political battles. The left just seems to deliberately provoke conflict for the sake of provoking conflict. I mean, again, I'm a parent, and certainly, teaching about gay lifestyles in school, just objectively, that they're gay people and they marry each other. That's fine. I'm 100% for that. That's information. Just presenting it neutrally. Draw your own conclusions. Just respect everybody. But bringing drag queens into preschool, into libraries for toddlers, I would not have appreciated that when my son was a toddler. I don't know why the left needs to do these things, then it needs to defend them when they're criticized. But there are multiple things like that. The very way, I should add, the activist left and the Democratic Party, the vocabulary is becoming very jargony in a way, again, that alienates people. And so I think Trump is, to some extent, his very plain-spoken, vulgar offensively vulgar language is a response to that. And part of his appeal is a cultural response to what is perceived as a certain offensive elitism by the Democratic Party. And if the Democratic Party had any brains, they would have cleaned up their act a long time ago. But in some respects, basically, there's a tone deafness in the Democratic Party that persists to this day. And if Trump does win this election, that tone deafness, the unnecessary tone deafness, will have contributed to Trump's victory. Anyway, I have to go now, and have a good day, everybody. It's been a pleasure being on with everybody.
Dr. David Gibbs, the author of the book,
You
The
as well.
Revolt of the Rich. The Revolt of the Rich. Get it, everybody. Sending you so much love and talk with you in a couple of days.
Thank you.
God bless. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, make noise for change. What do you expect to see next week with the Democratic National Convention, inside the convention and outside? Because Theo Hardiman and Dr. LaShawn Latrice, I believe that there's going to be a lot of activity on the outside. I'm wondering how it's going to be covered, if it's going to be fully covered, if it's going to be minimized. If they're going to tell us it was 10,000 people when we know there were 100,000. Because they do that all the time, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, because when President Biden was here just a few weeks ago, as you recall, there were plenty of protests, plenty of demonstrations. They barely talked about it on television. I mean, certainly they did not give full expression to the numbers that were there. And they were, as you recall, Theo Hartman and Dr. LaShawn Latrice, there were thousands upon thousands of people out in the streets here in Chicago. So, I mean, what do you make of what we're going to see next week? What do you expect to see? What would you hope to see?
Good question. I believe that those of us who will be out there or inside, we're going to see something different from what's actually being projected throughout the media, as we have in the past. Our experience is there's always a tendency to downplay certain things because they want to shape the public's narrative and understanding or views of whatever is taking place. But I think on the inside, if I do spend time on the inside, I probably will not be shocked at what I see. I think that this last couple of weeks has been phenomenal in the way that they have approached trying to get us to believe whatever it is they want us to believe. But I also think they're downplaying these protests. I think they're downplaying the fact that people will assemble and they don't want to alarm people. And so from the perspective of we have so many people coming from all parts of the world, I think that they're being protected in a certain way in how they're projecting, how this information will come out. But I also think that there's going to be a few surprises on the other side. From those of people that are on the inside, there are probably going to be some surprises. And I'm not talking about the concerts from the artists. I'm just talking about the fact that, because think about it, Santita, think about it, Tio. Bringing artists into these type of platforms is just a ploy to try to pull certain groups of people. And unfortunately, it's like anything else. You can get their attention for 10 seconds without trying to change the mindset behind what you're doing, but it's not going to be strong enough to push what you're trying to push a certain message through, because people are very fickle when it comes to being played with. And I think pulling artists that people think are popular is just a ploy to get people's attention, but it's only temporary. On the inside, yeah, there are going to be some surprises.
Well, no, hold on. It's like you're reading my thoughts, because there have been several stories about how celebrity heavy this convention is going to be. That it's really going to be celebrity driven. I mean, look, the push for Biden to get out, it was a headline for an actor, George Clooney, to say he needs to get out. I'm like, when did George Clooney become of great import in the election? Why? I mean, I think I enjoy his work, but his politics, I don't care. I mean, he doesn't influence me. He's not an influencer for me. And so why that was discussed on all the chat shows and in the news, Tio and Dr. Latrice, please speak to that. I mean, for days upon days, and then it's like they use that was building momentum because after all, George Clooney. I was like, honey, well, certainly where I live, that's not resonating. Nobody cares about that.
Not at all. Not at all. And historically, I don't know who does these marketing ploys and techniques, but historically, to grab certain people's attention, black and brown people in particular, you try to get something that you think is relatable. And oftentimes they miss the mark because, just like you said, that's nothing I would ever pay attention to. But I think they're not talking to the right people and they're not targeting the right people. And in essence, shows us that the certain groups of people that Tio and I represent, and many the people you reference, they're not necessarily being kept in mind when they do things like this. Because the average person is not going to pay thousands of dollars to see Beyonce, but they'll go and see her free. Absolutely. And so when it's all said and done, this is the type of stuff that makes the hairs on my arm stand up, because what it does is it shows that they have studied. If we just do this right here, which is so minuscule and minute, we can get their attention. But how long are you going to keep their attention if it's not genuine? If you're really not trying to do something to factor in the minds and the thoughts of how people feel when it comes to things like this. On the outside of this Democratic convention, it is going to be a lot going on. I think there'll be different sects of marching. I think there'll be different things happening, but I think there's a tendency to focus on who they see as the larger groups. So they're in essence ignoring some of the other stronger groups that are actually be out there as well. But some of us who will be right there in the midst of it, in the thick of it, will see the real story.
Yes, and
Tio Hardiman.
no, Lord Santita, what a lot of people have to understand as well, on the backs of your father, Dr. King, and all the solid people, Malcolm X, that really the Black Panther Party, how they really set the stage for all the like demonstrations and protests of today's world. And we don't, a lot of times your father does not get the credit he deserves when it comes down to speaking out against particular issues. What you're going to see at the DNC also is that it's not business as usual. We have a multitude of problems still taking place. And just backing up a little bit on the LGBT issue, I'm not against LGBT myself at all, but I will say this much. When it comes down to sexual education for grammar school students and younger students, I think that's not right, in my opinion. I just want to put it out there because the only thing I was thinking about when I was in first grade or second grade was just going to school, just having a little fun. You see, when it comes to sexual education, the way I look at it, the only thing that younger people from kindergarten on up all the way to 8th grade should be taught is if someone was to touch you, you make sure you report it. We were not even thinking about sex in grammar school. At least I was not. Okay, just being honest. So when you're pushing that type of agenda on young kids out there, I don't think that's cool. That's something that should re-examine. In other words, right? But back to the DNC, what happened? You're going to see, like Dr. LaShawn Latrice was talking about, you're going to see a wide like sector of people coming out. Like I say, the Palestinian conflict is going to be foremost. I believe that they're going to take most of the headlines because they're organizing a little bit stronger right now. They're expecting 100,000 people to show up. Then you have some information going through the underground circuit that there may be some other issues, and a lot of other people protesting for other issues out there, as far as what's going on in Chicago with the immigrants and all that kind of information there. So we'll see what's going to happen. But at the same time, when it comes down to celebrities getting involved in politics, and I know celebrities should not be the ones that would carry the water in politics. Right now, the Democrats may need those types of, celebrity type of people to come out to try to galvanize the support of people, across sectors throughout the United States, because all of the celebrities have their own following, Santita. They have a base, like Beyonce has millions of people, a base for her. And so it's going to make Mrs. Harris and the Democrats appear to be more popular than what they probably would have been if they did not have a celebrity endorsement, so to speak. Because, the rappers of today's world, they have millions, and some of them have billions of streams within their music, catalogs, sincerely. So the celebrities are needed. Now, Trump doesn't have that celebrity, like support as like the same way, but Trump has like American support for whatever the reason may be. And seeing one other thing with Trump, I just hope that if Trump loses, that the country doesn't like go up in some type of flames or whatever. That's what I'm praying on, Santita, because there is a divide, whether we want to accept it or not. There was an insurrection here in the United States. They call it a riot. It was an insurrection, okay, in my far as the way I'm looking at it. And this could lead to a major divide in our country, possibly. So I'm hoping if, put it like this, if Trump were to lose, Miss Harris becomes the president, the first female president, maybe then they could come together and show some unity. I don't see it happening, but that would be great for the American people to see. Let's say if Miss Harris loses, she come together with Trump and they show some unity with Democrats and Republicans. One thing I'm getting tired of, to be honest with you, is this back and forth politics, pointing fingers at this issue with this person, pointing fingers at another issue with the other person. So I hope we can get rid of those type of back and forth politics. I'm talking about with personal attacks and get down to the policies, opposed to personal attacks on people.
Well, I mean, really, Dr. Latrice, what say you? Because it has become personal. It is celebrity driven.
Yes.
And yet when you look at corporate media, and I look at it all, honestly, because I like to know. I can't talk about the corporate media unless I watch it and know what they're doing, just as I watch independent media and support it. I'm part of it, but that's what I do. And I also subscribe to Substack and similar gatherings to support different writers. Because many of the writers, Dr. Latrice and Theo Hardiman, have been fired. The investigative journalists have been fired from the big newspapers. So it's, we're getting increasingly, Dr. Latrice, we are packaged. We're just packaged. And I think that the power structure believes that if we can be mollified, and if we can be mollified and just shut up, they can have their way.
Right. And that's what's
it's
going
like
on.
we're
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go
It's
ahead,
like
go ahead, Dr. Latrice.
we're watching a movie manifest. There it's just a movie being made, and we're actually participating in the movie because some of it appears to be circus like. And what I mean is when you see candidates resorting to artists and then the artists don't represent the values that they're trying to project, it's an insult to people like me in the community, people like you, other people who feel like, are you all serious? You pick these people to project the message that they're projecting before you actually start your campaign. But it also shows the very minimal thought process put behind what has happened. And that's how you know there's some things happening behind the scenes that are just so sporadic. It doesn't make any sense. I just don't believe that you could launch a campaign in 3 months and think that it's going to be strong enough to just jump over to the other side, because you forgot about all the people you left behind for the past few years. So now people are feeling like they're being pressed up against a wall to say, you're going to support her because of this. And people are like, well, wait a minute. Where has she been? What has she said? What is she doing? What happened to her role as VP? So there are a lot of questions out here. And I still think they're trying to really minimize those conversations. They're trying to make sure that people do not project any sort of questions as to how this campaign manifested the way that it did.
Well, what are your objections to the way the campaign manifested, very quickly?
I just believe that the last minute moves that were made were a disservice to the Democratic Party, and they did it to themselves, because when you look at historically what has taken place, people have been given a chance to digest. The other candidate, Trump, has literally been running since he hasn't been in office. And now we have a new candidate that only has 3 months to get the message across. I don't think that was done in a very strategic way. I think that there was some fumbling of a football and it just landed in the right hands. And that's the way it's going right now. And everything looks like it's off the cuff.
Well, and that's why it's important to discuss this, because people are talking about it. And that's why I have continued to say, Theo Hardiman, there will be a convention inside the walls of the convention center in that stadium, but there will also be a convention outside. And I urge you to come to the Rainbow Push Convention.
Yeah,
the 8th through the 18th. You don't want to miss it. It's the People's Convention. It's where you will be heard. do you what needs to be on the agenda? I mean, are you? I know that the vice president is going to make her economic address today. I'm grateful for that because we'd like to know what her thoughts are. And please, everyone, before you hear that she said one thing 4 years ago and something else today, her realities have changed. She has seen things that most of us cannot even imagine. Okay, so give her a break on that, please, please.
Well, Santita, one thing that should definitely be first and foremost on the agenda, and it should be a priority, is this the influx of illegal immigrants coming to the United States. Right, a lot of people have come to the United States, and they went through the legal process to become citizens here in the United States. So it's like a slap in the face of all the people that are still waiting on a green card or waiting to become citizens here in the United States. And then you have the issue of economic and a lot of the resources being taken away from some of the poor and homeless people here throughout the United States, especially here in Chicago, the state of Illinois, New York. You have stores where some of the illegal immigrants are receiving $4,000 a month, right? You have stores where you have African-American people being put out of some of these apartment complexes so that the immigrants can move in and their rent is being paid up for 2 years straight. So what I'm saying, I know that may not be a primary issue for Mrs. Harris or Trump, but we must do something to kind of close the borders down to a degree. And I say this because I'm not against people wanting to come to the United States. Just go through the legal process. That's what I'm talking about right now. And we have to talk about how we can rebuild urban communities. If you travel to the United States, St. Louis, Baltimore, you travel to Detroit. Detroit is trying to make a comeback. You go travel to Memphis. Gun violence is still an issue. I support the Second Amendment, but we have to take a look at gun violence as well here in the United States. There's way too much gun violence going on. Police brutality, excessive force. You would think that we would have advanced way beyond some of the situations that we continue to see with police brutality, excessive force type of complaints, and people being murdered by the road police. So these are issues that should be foremost right now with any candidate running for president of the United States. Now, we talk about the world issues. That's a different story. Like I said previously, you talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That should have been that particular conflict should have been solved at least 20 years ago. Okay. And I just want to be straightforward about that. And then you have issues over in the Congo right now, which a lot of times people don't want to talk about Africa at all. But, the colonizers are still trying to, in their back doorway, trying to really sap
Colonize.
all the resources, you know what I'm talking about, take all the resources out of Africa continually, even in the year 2024. But a lot of African countries fought for their independence back during the civil rights era, during the Black Power movement, because our forefathers here in the United States, like I said, Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seals, your father, just H. Rap Brown, just Angela Davis, just to name a few, they stood up in a real giant way to make sure our voices were heard, and our voices were heard all the way to the continent of Africa. That's the reason why, like Kwame Nkrumah over in Ghana, they began to stand up and fight for the rights and independence for their countries in Africa. And when African leaders fight for their independence, a lot of times people look at them like, well, what happened to him? What's going on with him? Because he's going against the colonizer grain. All of a sudden, something might be wrong with the individual. Like, for example, when I speak up, well, what's wrong with T.O.? No, nothing's wrong with T.O. I just might be aware of other facts and information that you may not be aware of. And a lot of people scared to speak up, Santita, because they don't want to lose their situation of comfortability. They don't want to lose a contract. They're worried about how people are going to view them. So guys like me, I speak up for the most part, okay? So that's what I'm looking at as far as the DNC, and we'll just, the best is yet to come. I believe we're going to, like I said, and I say it again, the reality is that I think the momentum is swinging in the way of the Democrats right now, the way I see it.
Well, Dr. Latrice, I got a couple minutes before we head out to the second hour. I mean, what are you expecting to see? Well, I guess welcome to Chicago, everybody. I mean, what are you expecting to see next week? Because people are they're gathering in Chicago right now. We urge you to come to the Rainbow Push headquarters at 930 East 50th Street. We're meeting this morning all the way through. We had Congressman Danny Davis there yesterday. We had Mayor Brandon Johnson who came in. It was really a tremendous gathering. One of the justices on our state Supreme Court She was there. I mean, there were so many people who came to open up the convention, and we had an education fair where we gave away lots and lots of books and book bags, school supplies, and on and on and on. And so, just tell me. I mean, just I've got about 2 minutes here.
I'm
What do you
expecting.
expect to see?
I'm expecting to see some of the continuous chaotic moves that are being made. I think there's going to be some other things done that shock us. I also think that on the outside there are going to be some effective rallying events. There are going to be some effective protests, and there are also going to be messages that people are going to hear that they have not heard and that's been silenced because the rhetoric that the media is pushing is that everybody's just so happy and joyous, but they're forgetting about all of these issues that have been squashed and stepped on with just the back and forth that's been going on between the people who are running for election. So right now, I think that we just have to take a seat, and of course, I won't be sitting down, but many people will probably be sitting down watching because they've almost been put into a place of fear where they're saying, "Well, I'm not going to go near that place. I'm not going to go near this whole convention because it sounds like it's going to be utter chaos." But it's going to be good trouble. You know, the things that we need to do to rattle up people, to let them know and galvanize them, you have to. There's not going to be any sort of justice or any sort of change without any pushback. And so that's why we have to make sure that we take a stance, not to just go along, get along. So I'm waiting on the opportunity to be a part of these things, and I actually want to witness some of them, and I just want to see what happens. I just think that we're going to probably be a little shocked, but I also think that the convention turned into a party, and I think that's a little bit of a disservice to all of the money that's been spent to bring the DNC to Chicago.
Well, take care of the business first, party later. That's what you do. Oh, but I tell you, there's something to be said for gathering, because really, COVID was a very, very challenging time for us. We could not see, touch, and feel one another, but now we can. Now we can, and we should. And let us get together at Rainbow Push the 15th, the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, so that we can come together and reason together and find out where we're going from here. Coming up in the next hour, Greg Palast, everybody. The best democracy money can buy, investigative journalist, intrepid investigative reporter. He has a movie many of you saw when he was in Chicago last, but he's bringing it back. It's been edited so you can have more current information in there. At 3 or 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon at Rainbow Push, he will be there. And he's going to be there earlier talking about voting rights, voter suppression. Voter fraud. Let's talk about this because all of this is so important. It's so important. But pay attention to this convention. By the time you hear this, we will be opening the Democratic Convention. What's going to happen there? Well, we're going to see. Stay right there. More of the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody like and share this show. Please like and share the show. And join us in the second hour on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel at Santita J on X. We'll be back in just a moment. And of course, my dear brother, beloved, Teal Hardiman on WVON every Sunday from 6 to 7 a.m. Join him. And then you'll come over to Keep Hope Alive on Sunday.
Yes,
keep working all day long. I know he is like, what? I don't want to see you anymore, but you're going to see a lot.
All right. Well, I wish everybody the best, okay?
Sending you so much love. Coming up, Greg Palast, everybody. God bless.